Welcome in episode 28 of the Print Fest DFS podcast. My name is Justin Rue alongside Scott Bandy. We're here to break down our week 2 Draftkings cash game lineups. And week 2 was crazy, total bloodbath. We talked up Cooper Kupp on Friday. We ended up not playing him. Scott, how you doing?
Oh man, yesterday was pretty rough. It was just a flux of a bunch of different emotions. 1 o'clock felt good. About 1:45, I felt dead inside after Kupp scored his first touchdown. Kupp scored his second touchdown. I'm like 35 points below. We ended up swapping. Ended up getting close. Obviously, we had different swaps, different lineups to begin with, but yeah, I mean, it was probably the craziest day that I've ever had in DFS from a cash perspective, at least.
Yeah, it was a total roller coaster. So as you can see, I'm sharing my screen. You can see my lineup where we have Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and Lockett and Cedric Wilson. We didn't talk about like any of those guys on Friday, but I'll kind of talk through how I got on this lineup. So on the left here, you'll see my lineup that I started with. So I originally had, going into the slate, I had Justin Herbert, Najee Harris, Zeke, Chris Carson, the flex, Keenan, Lamb, Jamar Chase, Higbee, and I punted off with Jets D. I felt really sad about this lineup heading into the slate. I really wanted to get Kupp in there, but to get Kupp in, I had to punt it off with Adam Troutman, which we talk about all the time on our Friday pods that punting off tight end is probably best just to fit whatever else you can in your lineup, just because the tight end projections are so fragile. And we got hit right in the face with that. We both played Higbee, and he ended up having 1 catch for 8 yards. So I think going forward, I'm really, really going to try to prioritize punting off tight end to fit in all the plays that I want, because in hindsight, it was probably a mistake not to be on Kupp. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like the king of just praising the punt tight end every single week, and this is now 2 weeks in a row that I've somewhat, paying up for me would be in the 4K range at tight end. I've done it twice, and it's burnt me twice. And it's just the opportunity cost of paying up a tight end. Like, there's so much variance in projecting these crappy ass tight ends that, like, I'd much rather punt that than punt receiver or it's just brutal. Like, just going against my brain, paying up twice, and it's not worked out twice. And I'm on board with you. I'm just done with it. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm just not. I won't be paying more than $3,500 for a tight end for the rest of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So with the lineup with Kupp, it would have been Keenan, Lamb, and Kupp instead of Chase, and then would have been Troutman instead of Higbee, which would have been an absolute smash fest. So my main lineup without pivoting put up 125. The line take cash was 128. My pivoted lineup, which I will touch on here in a second, ended up putting up 151. So the pivot at 4 o'clock, the decision point was I didn't have Cooper Kupp. He was 35% owned in cash games. I did not have Noah Fant. And he was another, I think, like 25%. I believe he was the highest owned tight end. Him and Higbee were right around 25, 26%. And Fant scored a touchdown. So I was like, all right, I'm down. I believe I was 30 points below line of cash with 5 guys left going into the 4 o'clock games. From a game theory perspective, we know that this Chargers and Cowboys game was going to be uber chalk. We knew that Herbert, we knew, Keenan, Lamb, Cooper, all the ownership was going to happen in this game. We knew Chris Carson was going to be uber chalk in the 4 o'clock slate. So I said, all right, I need to get off these guys. If I don't, I'm not going to be able to catch up. And it ended up not getting there. If I would have stayed, I would have put up 125, would have been 3 points below line of cash. So I decided to pivot. I said, all right, I'm just going to get on something that people aren't going to be on, and it's going to have a ton of upside. And if it hits, it hits, and it gets me into the line of cash. If it doesn't, I was going to lose anyway. That's kind of the way I was seeing it. And so here was my pivot. I moved from Herbert to Tom Brady. Tom Brady, we knew the smash spot he was in. We didn't talk about it on Friday just because we typically don't like play running. We typically don't play quarterbacks that don't run, but Tom Brady in this spot, they had a massive implied total, like 32 points. Tom Brady, I'm throwing 5 touchdowns. He's on an absolute tear. So that was a great swap. I swapped from Zeke who I expected to be higher owned. He only ended up being like 12%, so I could have probably stayed on him. Had I known he would have been, 12%. I thought he was going to be in the 20s at least. And went up to Dalvin, who ended up putting 19.8 up on the board at 1% owned. So that was an awesome pivot. That got me, leverage there. And then I stacked up Evans with Brady to just give me more upside because I needed every bit I could to claw my way back. Stacked him up with Brady. Evans ended up scoring twice. They scored 24.5. So that pivot was off of CeeDee Lamb down to Mike Evans. And then I got from Keenan Allen, who was 50% owned in double ups, I paid $200 more for Tyler Lockett, who scored 34.8 and caught a long bomb, had like 170 yards and a touchdown. Just absolute smash day for Lockett. And then I just ended up punting off the flex position by going from Carson all the way down to Cedric Wilson, who I thought was going to be running a route on about 90% of the snaps. And in an absolute shootout, he ended up being like 9% owned. I was, maybe could get some kind of exposure to this Chargers game through Cedric Wilson. And it ended up working out. I mean, I scored 151, line of cash was 128. I clawed my way back. This is the kind of game theory things that you have to do. You have to pivot if you're not going to be able to claw your way back. You need to make moves, for these 4:00 games to claw your way back. Otherwise, you're just drawing dead.
Yeah, it really sucks when we get put in these positions because we know we are literally forced to fade the best plays on the board. But it did work out in our favor from a game theory perspective because we knew that most of the chalk on the slate was in the 4:00 games. So we knew that if things didn't fall the right way in the early 1 p.m. games, it made it very, very clear from the get-go that we would have to swap. There was no ifs, ands, or buts because when you're playing Keenan Allen, who's 50%, when we're playing Herbert, who I think was 38%, Carson was 40%, Lamb was 35%, Cooper was 24% or something like that. You got to get off these guys because every time they do something, the line of cash is going to move with it. And it's going to be really, really difficult for you to inch your way back into conversation of actually making money. So, you just have to make the pivots that are going to be loaned that maximize your leverage. Like, for example, your Lockett play, it maximized your leverage off of the Chris Carson chalk, right? Dalvin Cook at 1% owned. Every single point that Dalvin Cook gets you puts you closer line of cash without that line moving. So it's just things like that. The Cedric Wilson at the beginning of the week, we had the indication that he was going to be pretty chalky. As the week went on, we kind of saw that, okay, maybe he's going to go lower than we thought. Cedric Wilson at 3,100 allows you to, jam in guys like Brady, Lockett, Evans, and Dalvin because he's so cheap, and gives you direct leverage against Lamb and Cooper chalk. Because guess what? If Wilson scores at 8% and that's not Lamb at 35%, at 40%, that's going to do massive things for your chances of actually salvaging your day. So I love all your pivots, and it worked out. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times when we do have the late swap, it does not turn out nearly as pretty as it did for you yesterday.
Yeah, I certainly lucked out. But I mean, Tom Brady and Evans were awesome plays. They were just like completely unknown because in cash, smart people, they just play the best plays. And I did play the best plays outside of Cup. I faded Cup and it absolutely burned me. But, I was able to turn it back around by just swapping and kind of running into the nuts here with Brady, Evans, and Lockett. So, a couple of the other plays, though, we both ended up playing Najee Harris. He was 53% owned. He was a total lock. This Steelers offensive line's absolute shit. But at 6,300, he was coming off week 1 where he played 100% of the snaps. As a home favorite taking on the Raiders, I was just never going to fade that. He ended up putting 19.1 up on the board, had a receiving touchdown, 5 receptions, 38 or 43 yards, another 38 yards rushing. I was just never going to fade Najee Harris at 6,300.
I mean, did he play 100% of the snaps again? Do we know that yet?
I can check.
I'm sure he played 90+%, but yeah, 6,300 for an established bell cow, is a guy that is locked in the goal line, locked into third down work against the Raiders defense that is not scary in any shape. So yeah, he's just too cheap. I will say going forward, I'm really concerned about the Steelers as a whole. I mean, Big Ben looks really rough. I mean, they lost the Raiders. They luck boxed into a win against the Bills. The only reason they won that game is because Josh Allen looked even worse than Ben did last week. But moving forward, I don't know if I can play Najee again unless his price tag goes down, because man, it felt like we lucked out getting to 19. Like, that offensive line's so bad. That offense is so stagnant right now. Even in good matchups that we've seen back-to-back weeks, like, man, it's been rough trying to get him there. So I don't know. Moving forward, I'm gonna be I think I'm gonna scale it back with Najee.
Yeah, so he ended up playing 94% of the snaps in week 1 or week 2.
Yeah.
So
And you're just outside of Christian McCaffrey, like, who's playing that many snaps? So
yeah.
it's locked into the workload. It's just, man, that team sucks.
Yeah, the efficiency is terrible. And the thing is, he's a good player. It's just that the efficiency is so bad. See the stiff arm that he had where he threw Abram into the sideline.
That's the thing. It has nothing to do with Najee.
I know he's a baller. Yeah. All right, so kind of get into the rest of the guys. We talked about Lamb and Keenan Allen. If I go back here to my main lineup before I pivoted, they were just fine. I mean, Keenan scored 17.8, Lamb 17.4. They were both fine. But I mean, my swap to Lockett and Evans was just a total print fest. Evans ended up scoring twice on 5 receptions, 75 yards. I think he had 2 of those touchdowns at the goal line. Just every time they're just throwing within the 5, they're just throwing it to Evans and Gronk every time. And then Lockett, we mentioned Lockett was the leverage off of the heavy ownership of Chris Carson. Carson was an awesome play, but he was 40% owned in cash. Lockett ended up being 3.8%. And so Carson still ended up scoring twice, but other than that, he didn't have a reception, and I think he only had like maybe 40 yards rushing. So outside of those 2 touchdowns, Carson was kind of a bust. And Lockett, process-wise, he gave me direct leverage off of that heavy ownership, and that's exactly what I needed, and kind of got me there. But so at tight end, we got to talk about Higbee. So Higbee ended up playing 100% of the snaps in week 2 as well. So this is an every down player, and that's kind of the tilting part, and it's kind of a small sample. It was just one game, but week 1 he played 100% of snaps. Week 2 he played 100% of snaps. He's out there running routes, and we know he's a decent enough talent. But everything went to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods in this game, and we want to punt off a tight end. But it's tough because I think I would make the play again at 4,100 for a guy playing 100% of snaps. But it's brutal. It's brutal. 1.8 points, just total bust.
This Higbee play is really tilting for me for 2 reasons. One, because we didn't play Kupp. So every single time sitting there, the Rams they got the ball back, and it's just Kupp. That first touchdown, like, was anyone even in the same zip code as Cooper Kupp? Like, man, like,
it's twice now. It happened last week too. Happened week 1.
Yeah, and it's like, man, so that sucked. On top of paying up for Higbee at 4,100, which is, I mean, it's not paying up, but for what we usually like to do, it kind of is. And then secondly, man, like, I liked Fant better all week, and it was close, but I did slightly prefer Fant. I ended up on Higbee just because of the build that I ended up on, at least to start the day. I literally had no salary left, so it was Higbee, or I was gonna have to, maneuver something else around that I didn't feel as comfortable doing in order to get Fant in there. So, I mean, it's kind of like a double whammy. Like, we didn't play Kupp. I like Fant better, and I'm paying up a tight end. Like, man, that is tilting. That is really, really tilting. But I mean, he was a fine play at 4.1K. Like, he's a good enough talent at tight end, like you said. He's playing 100% of the snaps for, one of the best offenses in the NFL. So, on paper, like, the play was completely fine. It's just, Sometimes you're the hammer and sometimes you're the nail.
Yeah. Yeah. I really just want to be looking to pay down a tight end to jam in these other super strong plays. But another play that I went with, so I went with Jamar Chase at 5K. And so Chase was the last guy in, going back to my lineup that I started with at 1 o'clock. So Jamar Chase, he was 5K. He's playing basically, I think he's playing like 95% of snaps. He's leading the team in routes run every week. And we know what kind of talent he is. He's not going to be 5K for too much longer. He was basically nothing going at all this entire game. And then I think he'll end up having 2 catches on 4 targets and only a 14% target share. So really not a great peripheral day, but he ended up getting in the box and scoring a 42-yard touchdown. I believe in the fourth quarter of this game to kind of salvage something. So he ended up putting up 13.4 and being fine. He was the last guy in, and I don't feel great about the Chase play. But I was considering, like you went with Emmanuel Sanders, and I really, really just try to stay away. Even though Sanders was in a good spot, playing not, over 90% of the snaps, I really try and stay away from guys that are over 30. I mean, he's 34 years old. I mean, this guy, and he was a great player. I'm not sure how much Emmanuel Sanders has left. I kind of err on the side of young and up and coming players as compared to older aging guys, just in general.
Yeah, we'll get to my lineup here in a minute. But overall, I mean, great day for you. The pivot it could not have ended up any better for you. Yeah. My day, a little bit of a different story. So I'll share my screen here in a minute.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop my share here. Yeah, so I ended up putting up 151. The line of cash was down at 128. So
can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is where I ended up. So for what it's worth, the lineup I started the day with was Herbert, Najee, Carson, CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen, Emmanuel Sanders, Tyler Higbee, Austin Eckler in the flex, and then Vikings defense. And like I said, this zeroed me out salary-wise. So my early guys ended up being Najee, Emmanuel Sanders, and Higbee. Najee completely fine. Higbee really, that really hurt. Like getting 1.8 from that position, especially when Chalky Fant, he put up like 14 or something like that. But man, the Emmanuel Sanders call at 4K, he's playing the second most snaps on the team behind Stephon Diggs. We know Buffalo always smacks Miami in the mouth, and it happened again, even though, still Josh Allen just doesn't look like the same guys last year. I think Manny Sanders was 6 in air yards after last week. He actually did have a long catch. I think he went down to like the 3 or the 4, and that was pretty tilting. And then he didn't see another catch for it seemed like a month. But yeah, so he ended up, 2 catches, 48 yards. Freaking Zach Moss got in the end zone. I think it was Dawson Knox scored. Jake Kumro, I think, got a red zone target. It was getting really tilting. So he just didn't end up getting there. And similar to the Cedric call, I thought early in the week, it seemed like Cedric and Emmanuel Sanders were going to carry some ownership. Sanders surprised me more than Cedric. I thought Sanders would be more than 7.9%. I even think Cole Beasley ended up with more ownership than Sanders, which I did not see coming. But so, after the early games, I was in a world of trouble. I think I was 34, 35 points below the line of cash and double ups right before the 4 o'clock games kicked off. So what I ended up doing was, to get off the massive Carson chalk, I gave myself as much leverage as possible. So I went with a Wilson and Metcalf stack. With Metcalf and Lockett, I'll get into this in a minute, but I can't do this anymore. I always pick the wrong guy, and I had the salary for Metcalf. In a vacuum, I like Metcalf better than Lockett in these spots, so I went Metcalf. So that gave me maximum leverage off of Carson. Dalvin Cook, we knew no one was playing him. We knew it. Didn't think he'd be 1%, but man, we knew that Dalvin. When I'm 35 points behind the line of cash, Dalvin Cook has about as much upside as any running back in the league. So getting him at 1%, that was just beautiful. I went with Cedric Wilson just like you because he was so cheap. That's direct leverage off of Lamb and Cooper. And we knew that, as the week went on, it seemed like he was going to carry less and less ownership. And he allows you to jam Ross and Cook and Metcalf and Evans. And Mike Evans, I also jammed him in. I said on the Friday show that I thought he was going to windmill. I thought he was in for a real big bounce back. And getting him at 8% as well, like Mike Evans isn't the kind of guy you're going to play in cash, but he carries that massive week-to-week touchdown upside. We saw that come to fruition yesterday. So where to start? Man, I thought it was dead for a while. I'll start here. Watching Metcalf do close to nothing while Lockett has his best game of his season. This will probably be the best game of the season. I mean, 170 yards. He caught 2 bombs. One was a touchdown. It wasn't as bad because I was at least getting the points from Russ. And Russ was great. I can't ask for much more from Russ than 26 points. That's completely fine. Russ is not the problem. But, man, paying a 7.6 price tag and getting 11 points from Metcalf and watching Lockett go off, and this is the exact same spot that I was in last year. I played Metcalf, and Lockett had he went 14 catches for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just had a career day. And it was the same day that Metcalf dropped that ball running into the end zone, and so the touchdown got called back, and it was just a miserable time to be made. But so what I'm saying is, I will never play another Seahawks receiver if I'm late swapping. If I'm not, I will find another route to go. I can't. Third time's a charm. I'm not doing this again. But Evan smashed. He got there 24.5 points. Cedric, he didn't really need to do much. Cedric was just about jamming these other guys into our lineup. Dalvin ended up being fine. He got 19.8. He left this game with an injury for a little bit, but at 1.2 points, those 19.8 points are massive when you're trying to come back from a 35-point hole. And it's 19 points that did not move the cash line at all. And that's really, really, really important when you're talking about this swap. Getting a guy that low owned, every single time he touches the ball, you're accruing points that are getting you back into the conversation. So, and then we get down to the end of this Titans Seahawks game, and oh baby, Tennessee ties the game up. I'm 1.8 points below the line of cash. Line of cash was 127.9. And I'm at 126.1, and I have a whole overtime of Russ and Metcalf. So, the Titans win the coin flip. They go 3 and out. Well, they got a roughing the passer call, so they basically went 3 and out twice. Get the ball back. I'm like, man, I literally just need a catch from Metcalf, or I just need Russ to do close to anything. I mean, we go incomplete to Metcalf. It might have went incomplete to Metcalf again, and then Russ gets sacked on 3rd down, and they punt the ball away. The shitty punt, the Titans run it back 9 yards. They start their field position at the Seattle 38, and right then I knew I was dead. They give the ball to Henry a couple times. He trucks them like he'd been trucking them all freaking day. Kick the field goal, game winner. So in overtime, I got 0 points from Russ, 0 points from Metcalf, and I end the day 1.8 points below the line of cash. Just a complete dagger after I was getting excited. I thought I was alive late. And, that's just the luck of the draw. And to make matters worse, my original lineup would have cashed. If I didn't late swap, I would have freaking cashed. I think that lineup ended with 132.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been 5 points above. And this is a conversation we have to have as well. If I would have known that freaking Austin Eckler was going to be 5% owned in double ups, I would have kept him in my lineup all day. We both thought that he was going to be pretty highly owned. He was in a great spot. He was too cheap. I guess the flop lag. I guess it was the flop lag. Is that why people didn't play him? Because man, he was in a great spot.
Yeah,
he ended up scoring.
Yeah,
he ended up scoring 22.5 points, not on 9 receptions, and didn't even get in the box. If I would have known he was going to be 5%.
It must have been recency bias and him not catching any balls. I was like, man, I thought he was a total smash play. And we talked about him on Fridays. He was an awesome play. I can't believe I was absolutely floored that Austin Eckler was 5% owned against the Cowboys at 70. What was he, 7,300? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'd have known that, I would have been all over Eckler as well. That's just crazy. But all in all, I think even though your original lineup did end up scoring more than your pivoted lineup, I think that you made the right call. From a decision point, I think you made the right call to pivot. You didn't have Cup, you didn't have Fant. Those guys were uber chalk. Over 30% owned for Cup and 25% owned for Fant. I think that's the right call to pivot. That just didn't work out, and that's kind of the way it goes. When you pivot, you're pivoting to suboptimal guys, and you just have to hope that the chalk busts, and that's kind of the way it goes when you don't play a guy who's extremely chalky. Was probably the second highest owned guy on the slate at wide receiver, and if you don't play him and he puts up a 40 bomb on you, you need to scramble, and that's what we had to do. It worked out for me. You almost got there. It didn't work out for you, but that's just kind of the way it goes. You have anything else to add on your lineup or anything else for this week?
I mean, just in general, it's tilting when one guy kind of decides who wins and who loses. I mean, we've seen Derrick Henry do it in the past. Yeah. Last week we had the Christian Kirk week, we had the Will Fuller week, where if you just don't play them and they're chalky, like you're just done for. And that's the name of the game. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Not even mad that I didn't get there. I'm just mad that it was the Metcalf versus Lockett thing that, for the second time, just did me in. So, I mean, all in all, I'm happy with my swap from a game theory perspective. Obviously, in hindsight, I go Lockett over Metcalf, but it's the same general leverage play. You're just getting the leverage off of Carson, who was a great play, and outside of his 2 touchdowns, he really didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, on the next week, we'll try to get back to 2-1, and just keep the same process.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely a tilting week early on, wide range of emotions, but I ended up getting there certainly by a decent margin. The fact that I was 30 points under the line of cash at the end of 1 o'clock and end up 25 points or whatever it was ahead of the line to cash at the end of the slate. I mean, that is just that's crazy. It's crazy the way it swings. But I think the lesson to learn here is that if you didn't play the chalk early on and they go off, you need to scramble. You need to pivot and try to give yourself the best chance to get yourself ahead of the line of cash. If you sit there and don't do anything, you're most likely just dead, and you're just going to sit there and be tilted as the line of cash keeps climbing. You're like, oh, my guys are doing good. But it doesn't matter, because if everyone else has them, you're not going to make any progress. So I think that's kind of the lesson to learn here, is to make pivots if you are far, far behind. But with that, we're going to be back on Friday night, bringing back our week 3 best plays on DraftKings. We're going to do the research and try to find some gems. And until then, good luck, everybody.